Tonight we slip into ancient Rome the way you slip into a warm blanket. Slowly, carefully, and with the faint suspicion that something in here is going to poke you in the ribs if you move too fast. You're standing under a sky that's gone from blue to smoky violet, and the city around you is settling into its evening rhythm. Somewhere, a vendor is still insisting you need one more honey cake. Somewhere else, a sandal slaps the stones like a metronome designed specifically to lower your heart rate. And tonight's journey is simple. You're going to follow the quiet genius behind Roman concrete, the kind that still won't crumble, even after 2,000 years of rain, salt, time, and the occasional tourist leaning on it for a selfie. You probably won't survive this, by which I mean you probably won't survive Roman daily life without complaining within 10 minutes. There's no Wi-Fi, no deodorant, and yes, the public toilets are exactly as communal as you fear. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from, and what your local time is. Maybe you're in a quiet apartment at 2:13 a.m. Maybe you're in a dorm room pretending you're studying. Maybe you're on a long train ride with a hood pulled over your eyes. Wherever you are, you're here now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin walking, not in a dramatic movie hero way. More like the cautious shuffle of someone who has realized the road is made of uneven stones and the Romans did not design their streets for your modern ankles. You step around puddles that are definitely not just rainwater. The air smells like smoke, olive oil, and something faintly sour, like a busy kitchen that never fully closes. Rome at night is not quiet, exactly. It's softer. The loudest chaos has burned off with the heat of the day. Now the city hums. You hear laughter from an upstairs window, a distant argument that sounds very passionate about, possibly fish, a donkey braying like it has an opinion about politics. And ahead of you, in the lantern light, you see it, a building site, not a glamorous one, no marble statues waiting to be unveiled. This is the part of history that usually gets edited out of textbooks, the messy middle, the scaffolding, the piles of rubble, the men with dusty tunics and tired eyes, the smell of wet stone. You slow your pace, drawn by the quiet choreography of construction. Romans are always building, always repairing, always expanding, upgrading, renovating. If ancient Rome had a motto, it would be something like, "Have you considered adding an extension?" And this is where you first meet the star of tonight's story. Concrete. It doesn't look heroic. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't even have a decent personality. It's a grayish, lumpy mixture being poured into wooden forms like porridge that has given up on joy. But you can feel it in your bones. This stuff matters. A foreman stands with his arms folded, watching the workers. He has the posture of a man who has seen every possible mistake and is emotionally prepared to see them again. He notices you hovering at the edge of the site, and his eyes narrow in the way all authority figures narrow their eyes at suspiciously clean people. You try to look like you belong. This is difficult because you are not carrying anything heavy, and in ancient Rome that is basically a crime. So you do what any sensible person would do. You pick up a small stone and pretend it has an urgent destination. The foreman grunts and looks away, satisfied. You are now officially part of the workforce. Congratulations. You step closer to the mixing area, where a few workers are combining ingredients with the kind of casual expertise that comes from doing the same thing every day until your soul becomes dust. They shovel and stir. They splash water. They add crushed stone and broken brick. The mixture thickens into something heavy and sticky. This is Roman concrete in its most humble form. A mainstream historical fact right here at the beginning. The Romans didn't invent concrete from scratch, but they perfected it in a way that changed architecture forever. They took earlier ideas, Greek, Etruscan, and other Mediterranean building traditions, and pushed them into something far more ambitious. With concrete, they could build faster, larger, and in shapes stone alone couldn't easily handle. And that's why you're here, watching this gray sludge like it's a sacred ritual. Because it kind of is. The Romans call this mixture opus cementitium. It's not a fancy term. It basically means rubble work, which is very Roman, naming your revolutionary building material after the fact that it contains rubble. You watch as the workers pour the mixture into a formwork wall. The wooden planks creak. Someone taps the side to settle it. It oozes into corners, hugging the space like it was born to be there. And you realize something oddly soothing. Concrete is patient. Stone is proud. Marble wants attention. Brick has a sharp little ego. But concrete just sits there. It waits. It hardens. It becomes the background, the quiet support, the thing holding everything else up without demanding applause. Honestly, relatable. A worker beside you wipes sweat from his brow and glances at you. His hands are coated in gray paste, like he's been wrestling a storm cloud. You, he says, nodding at your stone. Carry that over there. You nod solemnly, as if this is the task you were born to do. You carry the stone. You set it down. You return. That's your entire contribution to Roman engineering so far. But you do it with pride. While you're moving, you listen. Workers talk as they work, voices low and rhythmic. They complain about sore backs. They make jokes. They gossip about some senator's ridiculous haircut. The site is alive with small human details. And then you hear it, your first hint of the mystery. One worker says, "They say the old harbor walls don't crack." Another replies, "Everything cracks. Even my marriage." A third chimes in, No, I mean the sea makes it stronger. The sea makes it stronger." You pause with your stone mid-air, like your brain has just tripped over a loose tile. Because that's not how things usually work, is it? Salt water destroys. It rusts metal. It eats stone. It turns ships into skeletons. It makes your skin dry and your hair crunchy and your mood slightly dramatic. And yet, the Romans are whispering about concrete that thrives in seawater. This is the kind of obscure fact that hooks you gently, like a soft hand guiding you deeper into the story. It's not a loud mystery. It's not a screaming conspiracy. It's just a quiet question. How did they do it? And why does it still stand? You wander toward the edge of the site where finished sections of wall are already curing. They're rough, not polished. The surface is speckled with bits of stone. It looks like a cliff face that decided to become architecture. You run your fingers over it. Cool, damp, gritty. You can almost feel the time inside it. Water evaporating, lime reacting, tiny crystals forming like invisible snowflakes. The wall is becoming something new, something hard and enduring. This is where the second layer of tonight's mood settles in. The gentle, sleepy awe of slow processes. In modern life, everything is immediate. Your phone updates. Your food arrives. Your entertainment streams. But Roman concrete asks you to wait. It asks you to respect chemistry. It asks you to understand that some things become strong only by taking their time. A quirky tidbit drifts into your mind, like a sleepy side note. Romans were so confident in their building methods that some structures were made with concrete cores faced with decorative stone or brick. The pretty exterior was basically a fancy outfit. Underneath, the real strength was the concrete, quiet, hidden, doing the heavy lifting. So yes, even ancient Rome understood the concept of looking good for the public while privately being held together by unseen support. You take a slow breath and let the evening air fill your lungs. It tastes faintly of smoke and wet mineral dust. The city is cooling. Somewhere, someone is playing a flute badly enough to count as a public service for insomnia. You drift away from the mixing vats and follow the street. The building site fades behind you, but the idea stays. Concrete. Not just as a material, but as a philosophy. Because Rome is a city built on layers, literally and metaphorically. It's built on older streets, older walls, older myths. It's built on borrowed ideas and stolen gods and imported spices. And yet, it somehow turns all of that into something distinctly Roman. Concrete is the perfect symbol of that. A mixture, a blend, a humble mashup that becomes stronger than its parts. You pass a small shrine tucked into a corner wall, lit by a flickering oil lamp. Someone has left a tiny offering, maybe bread, maybe flowers. The Romans have gods for everything. Gods for doorways, gods for drains, gods for your pantry. If you sneeze in ancient Rome, there's probably a deity assigned to bless you. And you can't help but wonder, is there a god of concrete? If not, there should be. It would be a very calm God. The kind who doesn't speak much, just slowly hardens into eternal support. You keep walking until you reach a higher point in the city where you can look down over rooftops. The tiles glow faintly in moonlight. Smoke rises in thin ribbons. The streets twist like rivers. And there, rising above everything, are the silhouettes of massive structures. Temples, basilicas, bath complexes, arches, all made possible, in part, by that quiet gray mixture you saw being poured like porridge. This is where you get your first real sense of scale. Romans don't just build houses. They build statements. They build proof. They build things that say, we were here and we had the budget. And yet, the funny thing is, they don't build only for emperors and gods. They build for ordinary life too. They build aqueducts so people can drink. They build baths so people can soak. They build roads so people can travel. They build sewers so people can, well, survive the realities of a dense city. Concrete is in all of it. And here comes the open scholarly debate phrase, tucked gently into your thoughts like a pillow. Historians still argue whether Roman concrete's longevity comes more from its unique ingredients, its mixing techniques, or simply the fact that the Romans overbuilt everything with absurd thickness. In other words, maybe the secret is chemistry. Or maybe the secret is that Romans looked at a wall and said, make it twice as thick, just in case the gods get angry. You can't help but smile at that. A soft, sleepy smile. You continue your walk as the night deepens. The lanterns thin out. The crowds fade. The city becomes quieter, more intimate. Somewhere, a dog barks once and then seems to reconsider the effort. Your sandals, borrowed apparently, scuff the stones. And as you pass another construction site, smaller this time, you notice something. A pile of broken pottery shards, crushed into rough pieces. Not trash. Ingredient. Romans recycle everything. Even their mistakes. Even their broken cups. Even their failed amphorae. It all goes into the mix. You pause and pick up a shard. It's reddish, porous, lightweight. You turn it in your hand. And you imagine it, ground down, mixed with lime and ash, becoming part of a wall that might outlast empires. It's a strangely comforting thought, that even broken things can become strong again, that even rubble can become architecture, that even you, tired, overstimulated, carrying the weight of your day, can be mixed into something steadier by the simple act of slowing down. You walk on, deeper into Rome, toward the places where concrete becomes legend, toward domes and harbors and hidden chemical miracles. But for now, you let the first clue settle gently in your mind like settling sediment in a jar. Roman concrete isn't flashy. It's just stubborn. And tonight, you're going to learn why. You keep moving through Rome as if the city itself is guiding you by the elbow. Firm enough to keep you going, gentle enough not to wake you up. The streets narrow and widen again, like the city is breathing. In the cooler night air, the smell of cooking fires softens into something almost sweet, like toasted grain and warm stone. You pass a bakery that's still awake. A man inside is pulling flat loaves from an oven, the crusts blistered and golden. He catches you staring and lifts one loaf like an offering. You consider it. You consider the fact that it's probably delicious. You also consider the fact that you have no Roman money and the baker looks like he could bench press you with one arm. So you smile politely and keep walking. Rome is built on appetite. Appetite for food, for comfort, for spectacle, for power. But most of all, appetite for permanence. The Romans don't just want to live well. They want to leave evidence. They want their city to last long enough that someone, 2,000 years later, will stand in their ruins and whisper, wow! And you can see it in the skyline. Even in the dark, Rome looks like a city that refuses to be small. The outlines of massive buildings rise above the rooftops, hulking and confident. The temples look like they've been planted there by giants. The arches stand like frozen waves of stone. The bath complexes, huge, sprawling, almost absurd, feel like the Romans decided hygiene should be a competitive sport. This is where the second layer of the story comes into focus. Why Rome becomes obsessed with building forever. A mainstream historical fact slides in easily, like a blanket, Roman building booms are driven by empire. Conquest brings wealth, taxes, tribute, spoils, trade routes. That wealth flows into public works, and public works are political. An emperor doesn't just rule with laws. He rules with stone. He rules with aqueducts and amphitheaters and roads that literally stamp his authority into the landscape. In Rome, infrastructure is propaganda. You're walking through an argument made of architecture. And the Romans are very good at arguing. You pass a fountain where water spills continuously into a basin, even at this hour. It's a simple thing, but it feels like a flex. Clean water moving all the time in a city this crowded. The sound is soft and hypnotic, like a steady shushing. You pause there for a moment, letting the water noise soothe your brain. You watch a woman fill a clay jug, her movements practiced and tired. A child waits beside her, rubbing sleep from their eyes. A stray cat hovers nearby like it's considering a career in hydration management. Concrete, you realize, is everywhere, even where you can't see it. Under the fountain, supporting channels. In the hidden basins. In the foundations that keep the whole thing stable. The Romans are not building just for beauty. They're building for use. And they are building for crowds. Because Rome is not a quiet little city-state anymore. It's the center of a world-spanning empire. People flood in from everywhere: Spain, Gaul, North Africa, Syria, Greece, Egypt. Soldiers, merchants, enslaved laborers, officials, artisans. A constant tide of humanity. And all of them need water, shelter, roads, markets, toilets, especially toilets. You keep walking and your route drifts toward the public baths. Because in Rome, the baths are the beating heart of social life. You can't go far without seeing steam rising from a roof vent or hearing the muffled echo of voices inside stone walls. When you reach the entrance of a bath complex, you slow down. Even at night, it's lively. People come and go like it's a party that never ends. You smell oils, sweat, damp stone, and something faintly herbal, maybe rosemary, maybe mint. A vendor outside is selling snacks and small bottles of scented oil, because capitalism is eternal. You don't go in, not fully. You just hover at the edge, watching. Inside, the baths glow with lamplight. Columns rise like tree trunks. The floors are mosaics. Tiny tiles arranged into scenes of dolphins and gods and overly confident athletes. Water pools in different rooms at different temperatures. People talk, laugh, argue, flirt, exist loudly. And you think, this place is only possible because of concrete. Not just because concrete can be poured into thick walls and vaulted ceilings, but because it can form the hidden bones of a building. It can create spaces larger than simple stacked stone could easily manage. It can support the weight of domes and arches, can handle humidity and heat, can take a beating. A quirky tidbit slips into your mind, the kind of detail that feels like a sleepy wink. In some bath complexes, Romans used special waterproof cement in pools and basins, a kind of early hydraulic mortar, often containing crushed pottery. The pottery makes it more resistant to water, like the ancient version of adding waterproof to a product name and charging extra. You imagine a Roman salesman slapping a wall and saying, "See? It's waterproof. Perfect for your splashy lifestyle." You smile. The joke is gentle enough not to wake anyone. You continue onward, away from the baths, toward the Forum. Even at night, the Forum feels charged, like the stones themselves remember every